Impressive how the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution in Saudi Arabia is providing space for the development of the mechanisms, plans, and applications of the Fourth Industrial Revolution in the kingdom, and also contributing to the adoption of technology and best practices in the region and the world. Next, our first session will discuss more about the topic of harnessing the Fourth Industrial Revolution, challenges and opportunities of growing utilization of new technologies such as artificial intelligence, robotics, and Internet of Things, moderated by Dr. Dina Alanhdy, business owner and entrepreneur, B20 Italy co-chair Action Council on Sustainability and Global Emergencies, board member of Jeddah Chamber of Commerce. To start this session, it's my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Dr. Abdullah Al-Ghamdi, President of Saudi Data and Artificial Intelligence Authority.
As I stand before you today, we stand at the precipice of the fourth industrial revolution in Saudi Arabia. We thank the custodian of the two holy mosques, King Salman, the Crown Prince, the chairman of the board of directors for Sadaya, Prince Mohammed bin Salman, for their support and contribution to our continuing mission as Sadaya. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. As I look across the kingdom today, there is an acceleration and explosion in the use of smart mobile devices. This state-of-art technology provides unlimited access to knowledge, unlimited access to opportunities, creating endless possibilities for the world. The future of Sadaya is bright, with the hope of artificial intelligence. Our national data and AI strategy will promote the use of AI across the kingdom, increasing the number of AI startups, increasing development speed and acceleration, which drives technology applications, increasing our growing infrastructure. That is truly astonishing. This rapid growth requires rapid development of regulations to ensure protocol safety without compromising creativity and ingenuity. This has not proved easy. We must ask ourselves, how can the fourth industrial revolution benefit Saudi Arabia's infrastructure? How can the revolution accelerate achievements? In a recent report, A.T. Kearney suggests the impact of 4IR is massive. Non-oil GDP will increase by 4% annually, from 2017 through 2030, generating 1 trillion Saudi riyals in new revenue. As smart technologies accelerate, so also will the development and production of digital infrastructure. 4IR has a vital role to play in streaming big data in real time. The greater our access to data, the greater our ability to make well-informed decisions. In the past, infrastructure took years, perhaps decades, to develop. In the present, Tawakkalna offers tremendous opportunity, the possibility to reach residents by publishing new services in seconds. Sadaya has developed strategic objectives to meet the challenge of this fourth industrial revolution. Recently, we rolled out an AI project, providing wristbands to the pilgrims that they use during Hajj to keep pilgrims safe, serving a current need for humanity. In a future project, we will develop smart cities using Riyadh as a model. We will co-develop and implement the integrated smart city along with our partners, Royal Commission for Riyadh City and Business. We will develop a customizable platform for individual cities, capitalizing on unique connections to accommodate their individual needs. We will establish funding partnerships that address budget requirements. We are launching a project with the Ministry of Energy, defining strategies, activating operations, creating a sector plan. There are no limits to the possibilities AI provides. More centers for other sectors will follow as required, yet there are risks. Wherever goodness abounds, wickedness seeks to abound. For this reason, we are launching a fraud detection and prevention program finding and detecting fraud throughout various systems by using advanced data and analytics capabilities. As a result of these and other projects, we can and will do more. We aspire to be the top 15 AI countries globally. We will build a community for AI, making the best of data and AI a reality. We will create a welcoming, business-friendly environment that allows businesses to flourish, attracting the best and brightest talents to the kingdom, including sufficient, stable, and continued funding for data and AI development. Creating incentives to attract top data and AI institutions to the kingdom, to speed innovation and building our future. The kingdom, through forward thinking and a collaborative ecosystem, will stimulate data and AI adoption. The challenge before us is to implement these strategic objectives to meet the demands of this fourth industrial revolution. Today, we stand at the precipice of a bright future for the kingdom. A bright future where AI offers to light the path. It remains for us to engage the fourth industrial revolution, to harness our collective talents, to shape the future of AI together, to accept this challenge for the good of humanity and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good evening, everybody. The fourth industrial revolution is about more than just technology-driven change. It's an opportunity to help everyone, including leaders, policymakers, and people from all income groups and nations, to harness converging technologies in order to create an inclusive, human-centered future. The Saudi Vision 2030 has captured the opportunity and looked beyond technology by finding ways to give the greatest number of people the ability to positively impact their families, organizations, and communities. During COVID-19, we experienced one of the best practices worldwide using emerging technologies such as IoT and AI technologies that played a vital role in the national health, security, and safety of the community. It is with great pleasure that I'll be moderating the first session with this esteemed panelist, His Excellency Engineer Haytham Al-Awhali, Vice Minister of Communication and Information Technology, His Excellency Dr. Isam Al-Wugait, Director of the National Information Center, Mr. Alayan Al-Wutaid, CEO of STC, and joining us online is Mrs. Sheila Warren, Deputy Head of C4IR and Head of Blockchain Platform in the WEF. Welcome all. We'll start our session by a question to Your Excellency, Engineer Haytham. The fourth industrial revolution is expected to create enormous economical and societal value, underpinned by ultra-fast, ultra-reliable infrastructure. What has Saudi Arabia done in that perspective?
Thank you, Dr. and assalamu alaikum, everybody, and very humble to be here with my esteemed colleagues. So digital transformation and the fourth IR are key pillars in the digital economy. The digital economy, as Saudi Arabia sees it, is key as we transform from a carbon-based economy into a more innovation and skill-based economy. So it was a no-brainer that investing in a very state-of-the-art infrastructure will pay dividends as we go. If we just look at the industrial sector with vast investments of 10,000 industry or manufacturing houses, $25 billion in investments and working capital. The promise that fourth IR brings is a $200 billion dollar improvement and value created coming from improved efficiency and reduction in cost. And that's over a 10-year period. So the ROI was very clear to us, and this is just talking about the manufacturing section. You can draw similar conclusions from the energy sector, from the medical sector, from retail, from smart cities, what have you. We started this journey with public-private partnerships with the operators in Saudi Arabia to create a $15 billion fund to invest in the infrastructure of Saudi Arabia. Operators on an annual basis invest around $3 to $4 billion in their infrastructure, and it was very clear that if we went to catch up and take a lead on a global scale, these investments alone will not do it. So with the support of the leadership of the country, we were able to get the funding of $15 billion to put in the digital infrastructure for Saudi Arabia. This has resulted in about 3.5 million addresses in Saudi Arabia that include homes, factories, schools, and hospitals to be connected with fiber. We also invested a lot in the mobile infrastructure and mobile broadband, and that took Saudi Arabia from being one of 5 in terms of mobile broadband speeds just 4 years ago into 4th place currently in the world. So it was a great achievement from the operators, the ministry, and the whole ecosystem. And you cannot talk about 4th IR without realizing how important 5G is going to be in the mix. Today, with the cooperation of the operators, we have more than 13,000 cell sites powered by 5G. 60% of the cities are covered by 5G, and 45% of the populated areas in Saudi Arabia receive 5G service. This was all very essential to enable applications such as the 4th Industrial Revolution. But it wasn't just about the funding. The release of spectrum, which the telecom regulator CITC did a few years ago by releasing about 1,100 megahertz of spectrum, really helped driving the investment in the sector and providing a robust digital infrastructure. And I think the test of COVID was very clear. How Saudi Arabia flourished digitally was a clear testament on how robust the infrastructure was. Also, the Ministry of Energy as well as Saudi Electric set out on a very ambitious project to roll out 10 million smart meter electric meters in a period of 1 year. And I think without a very robust narrowband IoT network that we have here in Saudi Arabia, that wasn't going to be possible to achieve in such a small period of time. And I think last but not least, data is the fuel for 4th IR, and cloud is very essential to data flows and monetizing data. We've done a lot of programs that really encourage investments in the cloud field, and I think, alhamdulillah, this has resulted in Google and Alibaba announcing very big investments and partnerships with both Saudi Aramco and Saudi Telecom. I think this was a great win for the sector. And with the cooperation of between the telecom regulator and the electricity and the energy regulator, they were able to achieve a very competitive energy tariff or electric tariff that's hopefully going to bring more investments in the sector in Saudi Arabia.
Absolutely amazing. Honestly, I can say that we are all profoundly proud of the great leap that has happened in a very short time. Thank you. There are so many questions, but we need to delay it in a bit. Your Excellency, Dr. Essam Al-Waqet, Saudi Arabia has accelerated the digitization of its government infrastructure and has developed a sophisticated platform that has streamlined its public services. How does this set the tone for harnessing the 4th Industrial Revolution across the kingdom?
Sure. Thank you very much. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here among my esteemed colleagues. If we look back at all the industrial revolutions, you would say that each one of them has a key or major pillars that this revolution relies on. Let's take, for example, the 3rd revolution. It was the key pillars were technology, internet, and mobile devices. If you see a pattern at the beginning of that revolution, those pillars or those technologies, they had limited usages. So they were not accessible. They were not part of your daily life. If you look back at the late 90s, you would see that, internet was not available everywhere. There was not the concept of wireless broadband and so on. Move forward 20 years later, internet is with you from the moment you wake up until the moment you go to sleep, even while you sleep sometimes with the smartwatches and so on. So this pattern is about to apply in the fourth industrial revolution. Right now, the key pillars for fourth industrial revolutions, among many, is robotics, AI, and data, and Internet of Things. And let me focus on, I'm biased towards data, so I'm going to focus on AI and data. If you talk about AI, you would see, even though now we have many uses for AI before a couple of years back, but still AI is considered as an exotic term. People think, when they think AI, they think, sci-fi. So I believe that we are at the cusp of the explosion of the usages of AI and data in our daily life. You would see many applications, you would see many usages for that. What are we doing in Saudi Arabia? And again, I'm going to talk about, SDAIA. We've launched the National Strategy for Data and AI, NUSTI. And that strategy has 6 domains. We call it Aspire. So you have ambition, you have skills, you have policy, you have investment, you have research and ecosystem. And probably I'll get the chance to talk some of those aspects later. But those domains have many initiatives on them that will help stimulate and create an environment for the usages for data and AI. Let me give you some of the examples of the products that we have currently. So we have the National Data Bank, and as the name says, that it is a bank that we care about. We have more than 175 data sets from different government entities. So this data bank is used alongside with our AI platform. We call it Istishraf. And we apply AI algorithms on those data that we have from the government entities to provide them with insights. And the slogan for that platform is evidence-based decision. The decision is as good as the evidence that you have for that. And with AI, you could find among the big amount of data, you can find that needle in the haystack. So this is what we're trying to do with Istishraf, and with the data bank. Also, we have the National Center for AI. This is the SDAIA's innovative and research arm. And inside, they have several use cases to apply AI algorithms in different fields, whether education or health or energy and so on. I'll give you one example of that, which is a case that they have done, and they achieved a good success in that, which is in the health field. In the breast cancer, one of the biggest challenges is that for breast cancer is that you need to detect it early to be able to treat it. And we had one of the cases that, due to the limited resources, it takes a long time, up to 6 months, from getting the X-ray until having, the expert to diagnose and see. These 6 months are very variable. Sometimes you detect a person that they had the disease a while back, and you missed a chance to treat them. So what Inside did, they collaborated with different health organizations, and they developed an algorithm, or they trained it on several X-rays, and they achieved the accuracy of more than 90% to detect, or at least alert, the cases of potential breast cancer patients. This case would not be this case would not be there if we did not have this mature, AI algorithms, and if we did not have the ability to deal with big data. So again, just to summarize, when it comes to the fourth industrial revolution, I believe you can summarize it, as far as I'm concerned, in two words: big data and AI. You need enough data, and you need the AI algorithms that would be able to deal and crunch this data to get you the most insightful insights in different fields.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Coming from a private sector, that really makes me anxious to be able to, inshallah, soon utilize this crunching numbers in a business perspective. Mr. Alayan Al-Wataid, STC has played an integral role in activating the fourth industrial revolution. How does the private sector work in tandem with policymakers to usher the 4IR technologies?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Dina, and it's a pleasure to be among you today. Thank you so much for having me. STC is at the heart of the fourth industrial revolution, and as a matter of fact, the Kingdom has set aspirational targets for Vision 2030. And the journey started 4 years ago, where we as a country decided that we want to lead in so many fronts, and one of them is the digital economy. That, as a notion, took us to infrastructure investments, whether it is on the fiber connectivity or to the 5G and enhancing our 4G coverage across the country. The aim was to create a connected country and a connected society and build up on that. That is the simple infrastructure layer that is to enable all of us to start thinking about a digital economy and to build up on that. On top of that is a simple way of looking at it where the ecosystem has to be built and put together, and that is where the partnership models has to take place between private to private sector, private to public sector, maybe along the different entities locally and globally as well, to create ecosystem that works from a digital perspective. All of this journey has started 4 years ago or even more. Today we are at the forefront as a country and as a company and as an industry as well to create that collaborative approach between the regulatory bodies as well as the policymakers and the private sector to create that ecosystem and making sure that it works. It does work, and there is a lot of showcases that has been put forward to the industry. The collaboration between private and public sector has been more or less very effective in so many fronts. Policies has been put together, regulatory regimes has been created and amended to encourage a digital economy, and more importantly, a lot of reform around digital skill set, where our talent is more or less being pushed all the way to achieve that talent of the future. It's a long journey, it's a long way. We believe we are at the right level of maturity at this point of time, but it is a long way that we are going towards that. The collaboration methodology around it is the key part where public, private, and policymakers, as well as the regulators, is becoming partners to create the ecosystem. The investment appetite is for sure there, and we are pushing the boundaries in every front. That applies on the different verticals of the different industries on the fourth industry. We see a lot of progress around AI, we see a lot of progress around IoT, we see a lot of progress around cloud services, and we see a lot of progress in so many other fronts, along with partners that are industry makers today, the likes of utility companies, the likes of oil and gas companies, the likes of banks, and so on and so forth, that has a mandate and a roadmap to evolve and move to the future as soon as possible.
Thank you. I think I agree with the concept that it's a long journey, but I think, mashallah, we have a turbo that is going to really take us very fast to reach the destination we want. Ms. Sheila Warren, what role can global governance frameworks play in catalyzing 4IR technology adoption in disparate yet intimately connected geographic locations across the globe?
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here today. I really appreciate the comments that have come before from the panelists that really spotlighted the importance of, as we are in this turbocharged world that you noticed, of thinking across different sectors about how we can create cooperative partnerships that will help fuel this fourth industrial revolution and ensure that that turbocharge doesn't get out of control. I think it's important also to recognize that similarly, we need to be thinking about the fact that the digital economy is a global digital economy. We are all interconnected. And if nothing has shown us that, if we didn't know that before, this pandemic that we are currently battling as a globe has revealed to us that really we are all only one flight away from anyone else. I think it's important to think about what governance is, particularly in the context of the digital economy. Governance is not just regulation, it's also the policies the private sector puts into place around how they track data, how they might share data, how they're processing data, for example, that can feed into the creation of some of the algorithms that others of my esteemed colleagues have discussed today. This doesn't happen in a vacuum, but there is a really important cultural context that's happening. And of course, here in the kingdom, we've noted that this turbocharging is because of a cultural readiness that the population does have for these kinds of innovations. That isn't necessarily the case all around the world. And to ensure that we don't create a more stratified society, but instead that we are able to create markets and to create connections and to better the standard of living for others in every part of the ecosystem globally, we need to think about governance in a global way. We've heard about the extraordinarily impressive leaps from the panel today. And something that the forum focuses on, and here at the C4IR we focus on, are what are the governance gaps that are maybe impeding the ability of society to advance and progress even more when it comes to technologies. These include issues like privacy, liability, cross-border regulatory discrepancies, the potential for misuse by bad or nefarious actors, or even those who may inadvertently fall into patterns that are not societally productive, just completely by accident. We have to think about how regulatory agencies can ensure the unrestricted flow of data that is needed for many of these new technologies. And that includes cross-border data flows, which aren't always factored into consideration at a national level. We need to think about the vulnerability of IoT devices to hacks that may come from attackers that do not sit within a particular jurisdiction. And what are the consequences if we track such behavior? How do we have a global framework for creating accountability around such activity? I think we also have to factor in the pandemic and the governance and oversight needs that have been highlighted by the pandemic during this time. These include things like balancing the need for human supervision of automated technologies, thinking about touchless operations in a post-COVID-19 world when we do eventually get there, and thinking about privacy and how citizens all around the world are thinking about privacy when it comes to things like apps. We also can learn a lot from the approaches taken by innovative governance frameworks in other jurisdictions. Some of these may suit future economic engines that maybe are not quite relevant for any particular jurisdiction. And in this, the kingdom can lead the way and be the world leader in demonstrating some of this innovation.
Absolutely.
There are places in the world that have already introduced guidelines that think about the balance of privacy, human rights, ethics, etc., when thinking about government algorithms. And of course, public-private cooperation, where, as we've heard, there is leadership already happening within the region.
Absolutely.
And lastly, I think we need to recognize that the regulatory innovations in technology that the pandemic has necessitated or brought into being, or at least paved the way for, may not necessarily be innovations that need to be permanent. And here again, we can learn from different cultural contexts as they explore what might these different innovations have led to and what might be the unintended consequences. So beyond just observation of other jurisdictions and their own innovations, recognizing the digital economy as something that is global in nature, that the innovations that we're building are eventually intended to connect citizens in any jurisdiction and enabling them to participate in that global digital economy and to take advantage of opportunities that exist all over the world and bring those benefits home. I am heartened that the kingdom is leading the way in turbocharging this fourth industrial revolution and very excited to see what comes next.
Thank you, Sheila. Taking away what you just mentioned about the importance of policies, I will direct my question to Your Excellency, Engineer Haytham. What policies and best practices are needed to accelerate the fourth industrial revolution on a global scale?
I'm not sure if there's one magic pill that can really solve for it all, but let me just speak about what we've done in Saudi Arabia. It all starts with the vision and the political will, and I think under Vision 2030, this is available to all of us. And as part of the vision, many of entities, including the ministry, was involved in what we call the National Digital Economy Policy that was approved by the Minister of Councils, the Council of Ministers mid last year. And really gives a guideline on what we want to do when it comes to digital economy, from the infrastructure all the way the value chain until we reach the entrepreneur, because all this value is interrelated. So we started with the digital economy policy, and then we looked at the supply and demand policies. Two of them come to mind, which one was the cloud first policy, which was now mandated on all government and semi-government agencies to think about cloud first when it comes to their consumption of services in IT. And that was an effort to kind of stimulate the cloud market, that on top of it will come other things such as the fourth industrial revolution. The second was the national spectrum strategy that the telecom regulator issued. And within that national spectrum strategy, there was 23 gigahertz of spectrum available for 5G and other applications that are very core into the 4IR development. We then also looked at the current regulations and policies in place. We reviewed a little bit over 200 of them to make sure that they are digitally compatible and, let's say, business friendly, if you will. This has resulted in about 25 either new or amended regulations over the past year and a half to more entice the investment market, the innovation market, and the digital market. It was also very important for us to kind of incentivize and help develop the technology market. The Council of Ministers also approved a 2 billion Riyal fund called the National Technology Development Program that started mid of this year. And the aim of it is to stimulate both supply and demand in terms of R&D, in terms of talent, in terms of adoption, and in terms of innovation. So these four key elements are going to be the pillars that the program is going to be relying on for the next 5 years. Last but not least, certainly not least, is human capital. You cannot have this advancement in technology without the human capital and innovation that really drives it. Through the past 3 years, we've at MCIT Plus trained more than 40,000 men and women here in the country on technologies such as data and AI, cybersecurity, programming, robotics, and what have you. And we're going to continue that effort for years to come, inshallah. Because without these innovative minds, you cannot really fuel and grow the sector. And I think that the last point I would like to leave you with is that you really cannot manage what you cannot measure. Together with the NIDLIP program, we're working on the fourth IR maturity index, which hopefully will kind of measure our progress as we implement these policies and incentive programs throughout the years.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you very much for that. Your Excellency, Dr. Isam, how can regulatory agencies ensure the unrestricted flow of data necessary for many new technologies to operate robustly and efficiently while still safeguarding user privacy?
Sure. So if you look at any field, regulation or proper or mature regulation is at the heart of that field. If it fails, then the whole ecosystem will collapse, whether in any field, IT or finance or health or education or you name it. The issue of data flow is a very controversial subject. It's always dealt with very sensitive way because, for the development in those fields in AI and big data, you need to enable data flow. At the same time, you do have the issue of the privacy. How do you protect the privacy of the users or of the owners of these data? And the answer to that is the proper regulation. there are many key players when it comes to 4IR in Saudi Arabia, but when it comes to data, we have the regulatory arm for SDAIA, which is NDMO, the National Data Management Office. And so far, we have released 4 policies when it comes to data. So you have open data policy, you have data sharing policy, you have freedom of information policy, and personal data protection policy. So those policies gives safeguards the privacy of the information while promoting at the same time promoting the usage and the utilization of the data. So you know the balance is there in those policies. I believe that if you don't have that kind of regulations, you will either go to either one of 2 extremes, whether you basically prevent the free flow of data or you enable it, compromising the privacy of the users. So this is what has been done in Saudi Arabia when it comes to that regard.
That surely makes me more comfortable now that I can share my data, business level and personal level. Mr. Alayan, of the 6 platforms the C4IR KSA engages with AI, with blockchain, IoT, AVs and drones, smart cities, agile governance, what technologies do you envision to be the most revolutionary for the Saudi context and to be the most rapidly adopted?
I would be jumping the gun if I say one of them will take over down the road. Yet, I believe all of them are very, very important areas of innovation and of investments as well that the country needs. The economy needs it to flourish further and further. All of them has a very important and key pillar of advancing the digital economy. We are ourselves in STC as very active across almost all of them, and we consider them as strategic bets for STC, and we do invest heavily on almost all of them to make sure that we cater for the demand of these technologies and make sure that we do provide and enable our partners and the ecosystem players to achieve their objectives. I believe AI has a lot of demand. I believe IoT has a lot of demand and will also provide a lot of use cases for the country to move forward in smart city applications and so on and so forth. These are technologies that we believe the country needs, not only for its own internal use, but also to compete at the global level. The objective is to lead globally from an economy perspective, and I think we are all delivering to that.
Wonderful, thank you. Ms. Sheila, I will go back to you, and in reference to what you have mentioned, the C4IR has an interesting overview of the technology governance processes and best practices of several countries across the globe, and especially within the C4IR network. What have you found to be the key drivers of sustainable and beneficial adoption of the 4IR technologies?
Thank you for the question. I think the first thing is to recognize that technologies are not being innovated upon in a silo. And as previous panelists have alluded to, it's the convergence of technologies that is what creates the 4IR. So rather than focusing on which technology might be the winner or the most important, it's really all of them together and working in consonance that is going to create and bring into being this new world that we're all imagining and which we are rapidly moving towards. So when you come to thinking about technology governance, it's important to recognize that they are levers. So if you regulate AI in this way, it's going to have implications for your data policies. If you regulate your data policies, it's very obviously going to affect the kinds of algorithms you can build and the way you can use and deploy AI. If you apply certain kinds of restrictions on IoT and devices, that's going to have follow-on effects for the other kinds of technologies, and the same goes on, and I could go through each one in turn. So we've kind of observed over the course of a few years now where innovative governance frameworks have really been driving forward this convergence concept. And I thought I would walk through a couple of examples from other jurisdictions, some of which are also, as you've heard from my esteemed colleagues, have been deployed to great effect in the kingdom, but also some of which I think are maybe not quite ready for prime time, as we say, in this particular area. And the first of these, I'll just walk through them in quickly. So ethical governance, public-private coordination that we've heard quite a bit about, agile, responsive regulation, experimental regulation, and I'll get into what that means, data sharing, we've heard quite a bit about today as well, and regulatory collaboration. So starting with the ethical governance, part of what is really going to ensure that sustainable and beneficial adoption is what happens is putting and baking into our governance models this idea of ethics. And that is going to vary. Again, there's a big, there's national and cultural components to this. There's differences in how different jurisdictions are going to deploy an ethical governance framework, but taking that into consideration is important. Now, in some jurisdictions, they've actually developed specific ethical governance frameworks that are meant to provide guidance across all emerging technologies. New Zealand is an example. There were materials published about how you think through privacy and human rights in the design process of government algorithms. The UK, facial recognition. There have been a variety of different examples of this all over the world. And so we think that that is a way, having that foundational ethical governance is a way to think about and test that the governance models you're putting forth are not going to wind up leading to bias that is going to ultimately reduce the ability of your citizens to engage in the global digital economy, which I think we all agree would not be a great thing. We've heard quite a bit about public-private sector coordination. That's, of course, something that we believe in very strongly. We think it's important to think about collaborations across these different sectors so that you can ensure that what you're building is actually going to provide value to the private sector in a way that's going to encourage that kind of cooperation and engagement in the global digital economy. And here are some examples, I think, are the FSA, the Financial Services Agency in Japan, has moved at one point with the cryptocurrency industry to self-regulate and to kind of think about how you might police domestic exchanges. Cryptocurrency regulation is obviously a very hot topic right now. And there are other examples of where sandboxes and other kinds of experimental regulation, which was one of our other categories, have been used to great effect. The FCA in the UK launched this sandbox in April of 2020 that was focused on how financial organizations might come in and present their innovative business models and products, specifically in the context of the pandemic. In the United States, we've also seen drone testing that has been quite powerful. And there have been sandboxes everywhere from India to Malawi to Japan.
Okay, that is very
Lastly,
interesting. If you don't mind, Ms. Sheila, just due to the time, I'm going to take away what you mentioned in the importance of blending the rules and regulations, and I'm going to ask a question to Your Excellency, Engineer Haytham. The fourth industrial revolution could put a lot of stress on the earth. And as Ms. Sheila mentioned, how important sometimes it's created, the rules and regulations and the 4IR is created as per need. So the resources in our society, if it's not utilized in the right way, it's going to affect and address us tremendously. So how can we address these challenges brought by the fourth industrial revolution in a positive way?
I was hoping not to get an environment question, but yeah, with fourth IR, when it comes to the computing technologies, when we talk about blockchain and cloud, they do consume a lot of energy. And you know, Saudi has announced a lot of ambitious projects when it comes to clean energy and renewable energy, in whether it's in NEOM or north of Saudi Arabia, green hydrogen and renewables and what have you. So I think that's one important piece of the puzzle. It is a clear policy for the Ministry of Energy to focus on that. But I think on the other hand, we can really utilize what AI and IoT sensors do to help preserve Earth, preserve the environment. I think they can easily be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. And last but not least, I think R&D, with government-funded R&D, responsible R&D when it comes to the environment, the Earth, and how, you know, technology and nature can coexist. King Abdulaziz City for Science and Technology has a lot of work on that. So does King Abdullah University Coast. And I think the sooner we can see that research and results see the light, the more beneficial it's going to be for everybody.
Wonderful. I think the circular economy is taking you in that direction, and I believe that we are going to shift from a unenvironmentally friendly nation to a superb environmentally friendly nation through the 4IR, inshallah. Your Excellency, Dr. Isam, if you can, very briefly, tell us where is the investment of data and artificial intelligence technologies heading in the kingdom's advanced technological future?
Sure. So I'll contain that in the field of data and AI as well. First of all, investment worldwide is huge. So it is estimated that the economic output from AI by 2030 will be $13 trillion. From now until 2024, annual investment or spending in AI is going to approach $110 billion. So this is a huge amount of money, and honestly, in Saudi Arabia, we hope that we can stimulate the market and stimulate the investment in those fields. And this is part of NUSTI, our national strategy for data and AI. There is a huge part for investment. So this is one where you try to attract foreign investment and local investment and stimulate that. And our target by 2030 is to bring in $20 billion. Also in the field or in the domain of ecosystem, we're hoping to create a very healthy ecosystem for data and AI where we're targeting to have more than 300 startups by 2030. Another investment which is very important, and it's one of the big challenges in that field, is the skill set. So the skills is very important. You cannot have a thriving development for any field without having the manpower for that field. And data and AI is a very new field. And it's one of the KPIs that we have is to train more than 20,000 experts and specialists in data and AI to be able to help work in that ecosystem that we're planning. So this is, in short, what the investment in data and AI.
Thank you very much. Mr. Alayan, if you can in 1 minute.
Yes.
Cybersecurity appears as a challenge for telecom companies across the world. What's your approach in order to ensure a transparent and safe digital environment?
Okay. The tough one in 1 minute, no problem. Cybersecurity is, as you rightfully mentioned, is one of the major challenges for the digital economy to take its full potential. Yet we have been dealing with it in a very collaborative way. The regulatory and policy makers from one side and the operators as well as the global players on that field to make sure that whatever the digital economy needs in terms of protection and cybersecurity measures is being done and dealt with at the design stage from infrastructure layers as well all the way to the platform layers that is to cater for the services. And that is the fundamental shift. It's not something that we should think of later on. No, it has to be something that we do from the ground up where cybersecurity is becoming a major part of what we do. That's one dimension to it. The other dimension, cybersecurity is a service as well that is needed for each and every vertical within the digital economy to do what they need to do in a very secure manner. And we have been also very active and taking concrete steps as STC, launching our own cybersecurity company that provide the service across the different verticals. We believe the mission is going into the right direction, yet there is a lot of collaboration that is needed at a local and a global level as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, our time is ending. I personally have so many questions, and we have so many questions coming in from the audience online. But unfortunately, Yani, we will have to conclude our first session of the Saudi Forum for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Harnessing the fourth industrial revolution requires industry transformation, government transformation, technology governance, and frontier technology. During this discussion, we covered policy regulators, perspectives, obviously, and the challenges, the national strategic direction, while showing future thinking of the private sector and agile governance, as well as international efforts on and the challenges in the 4IR. So we are proud and excited by the achievements done so far, and very ambitious and optimistic to the upcoming of the future. I would like to thank Your Excellencies and your esteemed panelists for this enlightening, high-level discussion, and thanks to the audience and the participants. And finally, thanks to CACS and the Center of the Fourth Industrial Revolution for this revolutionary initiative. That's a wrap. Thank you.
Thank you, esteemed speakers, for a great session about the fourth industrial revolution technologies expected to fundamentally change the world. Ladies and gentlemen, now we will take a short 10-minute break. If you are joining us virtually, we look forward to seeing you back with us at 7:25 p.m. Riyadh time for the second session of the first Saudi Forum for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Enjoy your break.